get some analysis of proceedings or perhaps lack thereof so far. Joining me is political analyst Rebone Tau. Thank you so much for your time and staying with us. You know, in my introduction, I said proceedings or lack thereof because from our understanding, they haven't even dealt with the issues of credentials. And this seems to be a real sticking point for the ANC because we've seen with a number of ANC conferences throughout last year, there's always an issue of credentials. And now the ANC Youth League conference has the same issue.
No, absolutely. I mean, credentials, some have argued that actually credentials is a mere attendance register. You know, that you have the ANC for hours just debating an attendance register. But at this present moment, I think because of the issue of Eastern Cape, because of the two groupings from Eastern Cape, and there were issues around Chris Hani, that Chris Hani is being isolated at this Congress. And I can tell you as things stand, when I just spoke to some delegates and were saying that the ANC seems to want to actually deal with the issue of credentials in a thorough way so that when it's presented to Congress, it is not disputed by the delegates, you know, or they don't waste more time on it because they don't have time on their side. They wasted a day yesterday, they only started today. And by the way, I mean, the only thing that they've done today is the political report and only the Secretary General speaking. They were not able to even adopt the rules of Congress, even the program, which they did not have earlier on.
But why, you're saying credentials are basically an attendance register, and somebody watching is asking, but what is so difficult about an attendance register? Why can't they ever seem to get it right?
You know, when there's trust issues in an organization, I think there's a lack of trust in the ANC. And that's why every time they have to fight about credentials. Because, and earlier on I was listening to Sizopila, you know, speaking about the thuggerism that they've seen taking place at the Congress. So once you have an organization of people that don't trust each other, it's very difficult to then adopt credentials. But when there's trust, then it's easy to adopt credentials.
So what happens now moving forward? Because we have a situation where they are behind. They obviously need to wrap up. They don't have forever to conclude this conference. Do you suspect that they would be able to adopt the credentials and finalize the credentials and actually move on with proceedings of the conference?
I think as things stand, when I spoke earlier on to delegates, they were saying that some of the ANC and EC members have left plenary to go and have a discussion around the issue of credentials. And, you know, the president is supposed to come tomorrow, and I don't think that the ANC's got luxury of time and money, you know, to have these delegates from all over the country stay in Gauteng longer than tomorrow, because tomorrow the delegates have to go back to their respective provinces. And where we have seen in the past in the ANC that normally even when results are even announced, they're announced in the early hours when there's no longer delegates at the conference venue. We've seen in December also with the ANC conference. So, but the ANC will have to really make sure that these credentials, even if they finish at 4 Sunday morning, you know, whether with even the nomination, because that can also be another process that drags the issue of nomination, whether people will reach threshold, those from the floor that need the 25% to go to ballot, because if they don't reach threshold, then automatically that means Colin Malachi will be the newly elected president of the ANC League, because for now he's the only one who has reached threshold with this slate. And what is very interesting, that you're also going to have for the first time a youth league that has got a female deputy president, if no one is going to contest Phumzile from KwaZulu-Natal, while the other slate has got Thabiso, by the way, from KwaZulu-Natal. So the KZN has got two deputy presidents from the same province contesting each other.
Interesting. I want to speak about the significance of this conference finally happening. We've seen that the ANC Youth League has not had a conference for some time. You saw the Secretary General of the ANC speaking about the importance of the youth. The youth has been very neglected in this country, many would say. If you look at our youth unemployment, if you look at the fact that the ANC has not been able to gather itself together to have this youth league, how crucial is it for this to succeed? Not saying it won't succeed, but for it to succeed, especially looking at 2024 elections?
The ANC needs a vibrant ANC Youth League because majority of voters in the next conference are going to be young people. Compared to what we saw in 1994, the generation of 1994, most of them have become old, some have passed away. But I think what was very interesting when Fasia presented the political report, when she said, how many of you are unemployed in the room, and apparently around 70%, of conference raised their hand. So I think those young people that are there should not sell their souls, because some join politics for survival, for economic reasons. They should make sure that whatever resolutions they advance there are going to speak directly to young people. The leadership that they elect there will speak directly to the youth population, because you need a youth league that can actually relate to the young people, not a youth league of people that are just there to have proxy to ANC leaders, as we have seen in the past, or being silent or defending ANC leaders and not holding them accountable, because we need a youth league, if the ANC is serious, a youth league that will hold the ANC accountable of its own wrongdoings.
That is important. It's a crucial point that you touch on about accountability, because if you look at the state of the ANC, there's this constant message from ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa that it is a renewed ANC, it's a unified ANC, it's an ANC that wants to bring about change. But if you just look at what happens during the recent elections, you can see that they are losing ground, and you can see that they are losing the trust of the people. It goes back to the issue of credentials. There's obviously a trust issue here. So if there's a trust issue within the ANC itself, that's obviously concerning, especially if you think about ANC members holding each other accountable.
Absolutely. Accountability in the ANC is just a slogan, because if you look at most of the things that happen in the ANC, and I mean, yes, the public protector yesterday cleared the president of any wrongdoing on Phala Phala, but the ANC has not actually engaged on Phala Phala. The ANC last year, National Executive...
Why do you think that is? I'm sorry to interject.
When you're a president of the ANC, you're the most powerful person in the ANC, and it's because people focus more on their own deployment ambitions, so they cannot hold the president accountable because they are worried about losing their ministerial posts, I mean, you've got a National Executive Committee that is full of ministers and so forth. So how do you hold your own boss accountable when you know that in government this guy has got powers to remove? And that's why the July unrest, I always say, had the ANC dealt differently with Jacob Zuma during his era as a president, whether on the Nkandla matter, whether on his relationship with the Guptas, July unrest would have not happened, and it seems like they've not drawn lessons from that.
So what happens in terms of these young ANC members moving into a space where the ANC, the mother body itself, is not unified? There is no renewal. There are serious issues of accountability. There are serious issues of corrupt officials. I heard Fikile Mbalula speaking about the step-aside issue, speaking about what happened in the Western Cape, where there was one individual that opted not to really interfere or be part of that conference because of the step-aside rule. But, as young people, you look to your elders as an example, and if you look at the state of the mother body, you think to yourself, but what example am I looking at here?
I always say, post-1994, a lot of people have joined the ANC, but for different reasons. Not everyone joined the ANC because they want to advance the NDR. Some have joined the ANC because they've seen it as a vehicle to enrich themselves, to live a better life, or to put their interests before the organization. And so through that, you are sitting with a membership that you don't even know what it really stands for, I mean, today, even the ANC itself, nobody knows from an ideological point of view, what does the ANC represent? That's why you have, an NEC of the ANC that went to its conference in December last year, disbanded a youth league in 2019, and stayed without a youth league for so many years. That really tells you that there's a crisis in the organization. For the first time in the ANC, while yes, the youth league is going to elect its leadership this weekend, you have an ANC that has got all the leagues having interim structures. That has never happened. That then questions, do you have an organization? You don't have an organization if everyone is an interim structure.
I've completely run out of time, but I just have to ask you, what do you make of Colin Malachi? Because he seems to be the face of what they want as president of the ANC Youth League.
I don't know when you say what they want, who want, you know. I mean, Colin, he's a young man who grew up in the ANC, former president of COSAS. If he does emerge as the president of the Youth League, in the history of the Youth League, it would be Lulu Johnson, Julius Malema, and Colin Malachi, who would have been all former presidents of COSAS and later became presidents of the ANC. So that is the unique thing about him at this conference, that he is also a product of COSAS. Because if you understand the politics of the Youth League has always been led by those from COSAS.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for your insights. We do appreciate it. That was political analyst Ribone Tau.